GOP plans to repeal and replace Obamacare may also be in fantasy land. Republican senators have been working around the clock to write a new health care bill since the House passed its Obamacare replacement plan a month and a half ago. But President Trump's recent criticism of the House health care plan may make their jobs much harder. Charlie Gasparino with the details. Well, he wants a more generous plan.
Okay, so why do we care about this story, I guess, is the main reason. Not just from a standpoint of fixing Obamacare or repealing it, what the Republicans are going to come up with, but also because it's been said, I don't know if I agree with this, that if you can't get health care passed, you might not be able to get the tax cuts passed. And guess what? Dow 22,000, where we're at right now, is predicated on corporate tax relief. So just that's why I focus on this from a business
standpoint. Well, to be clear, we're 21,519.
Okay, well, you get it. But it's predicated on getting those corporate, particularly the corporate tax cuts down from 35 to 15 or whatever, yes. And that's predicated on getting health care and getting some savings from it. So anyway, this is the latest, I would say, bump in the road. Where we do have this, conservative House members are growing increasingly worried about what's going to happen in the Senate with that plan, and they are now pressing their conservative colleagues in the Senate to make sure that they don't get sideswiped by President Trump and some more moderate senators who, remember, President Trump deemed the House bill brutal. Remember, he wants to soften it up now. So what we are now first report sources are telling the Fox Business Network that House Freedom Caucus, you know, that conservative group inside the House,
which derailed the first effort,
and agreed on the second one based on some conditions, that their leader Mark Meadows met Wednesday with Senators Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, two of the more conservative senators out there, basically on the health care revamp to make sure that this Senate bill follows some very conservative principles that the House wanted, that's in the House bill. This is following what Trump said. So what does that mean? I mean, you already, listen, this is more than just process, this story. The story is about what could derail a plan that could essentially lead the way to tax cuts. And if you get the conservatives balking on this thing, if you don't get Mike Lee and Ted Cruz on board with this, with what President Trump wants, well, guess what? You're not going to have a health care plan, and then you're probably not going to have a tax cut this year.
Define more generous, because perhaps President Trump wants more services covered, which was a criticism of the Obamacare forced laundry list of things that you would
conditions without any constraints. I mean, I think the House bill had some constraints.
But the House bill also had a work for it line in there that was right after the Indiana plan, which seemed to work very, very well, also, where if you were an able-bodied adult with no kids, you got to prove that you're working and pay into it a little bit.
And also giving more power to the states, okay? So we don't have enough time in this broadcast to give you everything in the House. Needless to say, they're worried that Trump is going to start to unwind what they did and get the Senate along. So that's why you got pressure now being put on Mike Lee and Ted Cruz. I want to say one other thing. Going back to the Bayer-Monsanto deal, that merger, one of the biggest mergers last year, and by the way, the biggest pharmaceutical merger we've seen maybe ever. A lot of people think that this deal is in jeopardy, and particularly because the timetable for filing with the EU, they need EU approval. They already got the U.S. approval. They need European Union approval for this. It's a cross-border deal, is in jeopardy. They want to do it by the end of June. That's what Bayer has said. Well, guess what? End of June's a couple of weeks away. No analyst or investor I talk to thinks they're going to get this. And if that doesn't hit, well, then you got the whole summer off because Europe goes dark in the summer, basically, right? Yeah. And then you got to question yourself. Is this deal going to get done? We should point out that shares of Monsanto still remain far below the offer price. 117, I think it was a 125 all-cash bid, right?
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, the number 125.
Yeah, but it's still below that. That's 117. So the market is still betting that this thing probably won't happen. They have U.S. approval. They don't have EU approval. And by the way, not filing with the EU means maybe they smell something.
Charlie Gasparino, well, they're traditionally really ridiculously tight on that. They care more about hurting competitors versus hurting the consumer.